could turn her hand to anything. Wedding dresses, dresses for bridesmaids, even school uniforms. There was always a half-finished garment, either on the dressmaker's dummy or hanging from the picture rail. Sometimes she altered men's clothing as well. A trouser leg which was too long, or a jacket sleeve which needed to be invisibly mended. She didn't always charge them for it. If they were down on their luck, or something, she'd say, "Pay me when you can." Mummy never minded helping people out, although Doreen said her mum said it wasn't seemly. Frankie had no idea what that meant, but it didn't sound very nice to say it. Mummy often worked long into the night to get an order ready, and when that happened she didn't have time to play games, or to tell Frankie one of the lovely stories about her colourful life. But today was different. When they'd got up that morning, Mummy said whatever needed to be done could jolly well wait. Today was September the 3rd, Frankie's 10th birthday. Today was the day she went into double figures, and that made it extra special. 39, 40. Even though Mummy was so busy, Frankie had a happy childhood. She was surrounded by people she loved, and all Mummy's clients were nice to her. All except young Mr. Knight. Old Mr. Knight had been their landlord, and years ago he'd been Daddy's teacher in school. Frankie would have liked to have known a little more about her father, but she didn't like to ask. Daddy had died in 1925 when Frankie was just over a year old. Mummy said he'd got a weak chest and he'd caught the pneumonia. Mummy had loved him very much, and she always said he'd adored Frankie, but Frankie couldn't even remember him. Sometimes when Mummy talked about Daddy, she would shut herself away afterwards and have a little cry, so Frankie kept her thoughts to herself. And now she would never even know about Daddy's school days because, earlier this year, old Mr. Knight had died, and young Mr. Knight had taken over. 49, 50, her mother called. "I'm coming, ready or not?" Frankie shivered with excitement and squeezed her eyes tightly shut. After a few seconds she could hear her mother's footsteps coming closer. She held her breath. Perhaps the hiding place she'd chosen wasn't so good after all. A wave of disappointment surged through her at the thought, and although she stayed perfectly still, she quite expected her mother to tap her on the shoulder at any moment. "I see you, Jenny," her mother called, and Frankie heard Jenny groan as she emerged from behind the tree. Frankie held her breath again as her mother's footsteps came right up to her, but then to her utter joy her mother moved on. "Frankie," she called, "where are you? And I can't think where Doreen's hiding. She must be somewhere round here." On the picnic blanket, the other mums chatted. Every now and then snatches of conversation drifted towards Frankie. It was all a bit boring. The price of coal, and how difficult it was to get it at summer prices, and Mr. Ruddock's boil, which kept him away from his chemist shop for 3 days. "I've asked Mrs. Sherwood to make Jenny some gym slips for school," said Mrs. Ruddock. "She's very good." "I don't want my Doreen to have anything homemade," Mrs. Tom said sniffily. Frankie struggled not to giggle as she saw her mother walking on up towards the top of the lane where the fabulous views of the Downs spread out for miles. Hillbarn was on the outskirts of Worthing, in an area north of the village of Broadwater, and surrounded by farmland. In days gone by, the village had been a focal point for Easter fairs and a June fair when people came from miles around. Broadwater Green itself had been the home of cricket since the beginning of the 18th century, and somebody called W.G. Grace, who was apparently very famous a long time ago, had played there. Frankie had learned all that at school, and men still played cricket on the green. A moment later, her mother must have turned back because Frankie heard her say, "Ah, there you are, Pickle. How clever you are. I was looking everywhere." She lifted the bramble branch and Frankie stood up. "The only one I can't find is Doreen," said Moira. Frankie and Jenny looked at each other and grinned. Moira began to search once more. "I see you," said Moira at last, and Doreen emerged from the ditch. "I hope you haven't got wet." Fortunately, the ditch was bone dry, and once Mummy had brushed the dirt from Doreen's knees, she was fine. Frankie's friends ran back towards the picnic blanket where Mrs. Ruddock was blowing smoke rings with her cigarette. Sitting a little apart, Mrs. Toms watched her with pursed lips. A little later they heard her scolding her daughter for hiding in the dirty ditch. Before they went back to the others, Moira gave her daughter a hug and then said, "Just look at all those blackberries. Quick, Frankie, go back and...